Hey legends, super legends. Just want to go ahead and do a little bit of a documentation of what I'm going to do with Alan's bike. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to pull his crank arm off, and I decided to do this just in case some of you don't know how to pull off these like rotor crank arms, and some crank arms come in with a built-in puller. I'm using an 8mm tool here. A lot of these have a built-in, it's kind of hard. I have to break this seal. I'm gonna put the chain on the big chain ring first. You always want to do that so you don't hit that with your knuckles. So what I'm gonna try to do is just, there we go. You notice I went backwards. It gives you more leverage and you don't fly off. But that loosened that cap. That's what that is. Now I'm not gonna take that off completely because I want to take the pedals off first because he's not keeping these. So what I did was I put the bike on the ground, put the tool in there, and went towards the rear wheel. On both sides, you always go towards the rear wheel. I got a video that explains that. That's always the case, so you don't get turned around because the pedals are inverse. I'm gonna get them nicely cleaned. They're a little rusty on certain parts. Got some rust in there, nothing major. But put them on this rag here. We'll keep that. So now we got the pedals off. I'm gonna go ahead and put the chain on the small chain ring. Because my long-term goal when I do this is I want to make sure that the chain stays inside, especially when you bring the new chain ring. Don't forget and put that in and leave the chain out, then you're gonna have to break the chain. So let's unscrew this cap. This is something specific to a lot of these press, like the Rotor. They have their own self-extracting tool built in here. Let me turn the bike just a little bit like that. You see those little teeth in there? That's a tool in there. This is just the bolt. Now what I'm gonna do is there's a Shimano tool that fits those teeth. It's a cassette removal tool. This tool here goes right in there and it fits. So without this tool, you won't be able to properly loosen this little ring. This is an extraction tool in there. I'm gonna unscrew. It's not very tight, doesn't need to be tight. It just sits in there, it's threaded in there. So after you get this out of the bike, you take it out this way where you got that little concave, little hole in there. You're gonna flip it around on this side, the flat side. It's gonna go back. But the first thing you need to do is to put your bolt back in. So remember we took this bolt out that can be tightly in there sometimes. It wasn't very tight on this bike. And sometimes you may have to put the bike on the ground to loosen this bolt. This is already out. Once you get this self-extracting tool out with the Shimano cassette remover, you want to put the bolt back in. Just tread it by hand to start. I always do that because you don't run the risk of stripping anything, because when you're getting them in there initially, they kind of roll around until they grab onto the first few threads. So just go ahead and use your tool, your 8mm tool. This thing is hollow, by the way. The tool goes all the way through. You can see that all these bottom brackets are hollow. It goes all the way through. I'm gonna spin this in here. So now it stops. You don't need to tie it down. You got enough space, there's some threads in there. So this extracting tool that sits on the inside now is gonna go on the outside with the side facing you, the flat side. You start that threaded in by hand. Just get it turned. And then you can use your Shimano tool that you use to take it off to finish threading it. And that's what you need to do. And that stops. So now we're gonna take our crank arm after getting this nice and tight with your Shimano tool here. After you get that nice and snug, it doesn't need to be very tight. You want to take your tool now. I'm going to put the chain back on the big chain ring just in case anything slips. I'm not going to cut myself. These chain rings are very sharp. So all you want to do now is take your tool, because you remember you got the bolt underneath the self-extracting cap there. You're going to put that in there, and now you're going to be loosening. So like this, I'm going counterclockwise to loosen. As you loosen now, that cap, the extracting tool, will be backing off the crank arm. It will be coming off the bike. Just like that, it's coming off the bike. Boom, it's completely loose. I'm gonna shift down and get that chain off. You don't really have to if you're very careful, but as a rule, I just always do that when I'm working with any kind of tool near the chain ring. I'm gonna put the chain between the chain set and the frame because I want this thing to come completely off. And you see now it's very loose. Look at that, the crank arm's moving. It's off the bike. That's it. That's how you remove it. Of course, to install it, you would take this thing off first, take the cap out, put it back in the way it was when you're installing it. In this case, we're not going to be putting this back on the bike. It's going to knock the whole thing off from this side. So basically, let me take that off so you can see. But I may need to use something smaller and tap it through. Let's see, I can use this. It's in the middle of the frame and basically it's just sitting there. I'm just gonna push it out, that's all. So this, let me put this tool down. This is the crank arm, okay? The crank arms, basically, where's the other one? Here. So when you buy them, this is what you get for the crank set. They slip through the press fit bottom bracket. Same thing with Campy. A Campy uses a Herc joint that joins these two in the middle. That's all. They don't have a complete spindle there.